Hello my lovely viewer, I am back once again with a 2004 American superhero film based on the Marvel Comics titled Spider-Man 2. Watch the full video to find out the interesting part and please take care. As a disclaimer, this video includes my own analysis, commentary, and it's not a substitute of the full movie. Click the link below to watch, buy or rent the movie. In the beginning we see, Peter Parker is still struggling to combine his life as Peter Parker with his duties as Spider-Man. He lost his job as a pizza delivery man and earn only low salaries when he sends in images of Spider-Man, which Jameson simply exploits as content for further nasty articles in the Daily Bugle. Dr. Connors, at the university, chastises Peter for missing class yet again, as well as his continuously falling grades. He then informs Peter that his paper on Dr. Otto Octavius' fusion experiment is due. Later, Peter arrives at a surprise party hosted by his Aunt May, together with Harry and MJ. It hardly takes him a second to realize it's his birthday. And it only takes another second for his pals to inquire as to why he has been so unreachable and distant recently. When Peter inquires about Oscorp, Harry informs him that he has been promoted to the position of Director of Special Projects. They're actually supporting one of Peter's idols, Otto Octavius. Harry offers to set up a meeting. And he also nods to MJ and informs Pete that she is obviously still in love with him. The discussion turns to Spider-Man and Peter's photography of him. Harry asks Peter whether he knows who Spider-Man is, and if he does, would he tell him? When Pete fails to respond, Harry walks away. Afterward, as his aunt is sleeping, Peter notices a foreclosure notice. When she wakes up, she offers Pete $20 for his birthday, and when he declines, she tells Peter that it isn't much, but he should accept it. Outside, Peter catches into MJ, and she expresses him how much she enjoyed seeing him tonight. She expects for him to make a move, but he never does. Peter's jealousy is noticeable when she informs him she's dating someone else. He eases the awkwardness by saying that he will finally see her perform tomorrow. Before leaving, she says, "Don't disappoint me." Back at home, Mr. Ditko chastises Peter for not paying his rent on time. Pete then returns to his small apartment. The following day, Harry introduces Pete to Otto Octavius, who has heard through Connor that Peter is clever. And he sarcastically tells Peter that, according to Harry, Peter is a lazy. Peter learns about Otto's fusion project, which will provide practically infinite and clean energy to the planet. Peter is worried about the reaction stability, but Otto tells him that it will be fine. He is aware of the dangers and has planned for them. Otto is amazed by Peter's scientific knowledge during their discussion. On the night of MJ's play, Peter dresses up, buys some flowers, and disappoints his friend when duty calls. As Spider-Man, he helps several innocent people and puts a stop to some crooks. However, as Peter Parker, he has little luck at the theater because the usher will not let him in because the performance is in progress. Following that, Peter stands back and watches MJ kiss the man she's dating. She gives another glance to see whether Peter is there, but she somehow misses him. When Peter is swinging through the city as Spider-Man, he discovers that his webs aren't firing, and he falls to the ground. The next day, Peter contacts MJ and apologizes, but it's not enough to make her feel better. Peter hopes he could tell her the truth about his identity as Spider-Man so she would understand why he is often late or never shows up, but he understands that would put her in danger. Peter and Harry afterwards go to Otto's fusion energy demonstration. Otto's designed 4 metallic arms to work with the risky materials. They integrate with his cerebellum, allowing him to control them as if they were his own limbs. They also have their own artificial intelligence. However, an inhibitor chip assures that Otto controls them rather than them controlling him. The fusion reaction is dependent on a rare element known as tritium. Only 25 pounds of it exist on the Earth. Otto places the material and starts the fusion process, but it quickly becomes unstable and dangerous, attracting metal from all over the room. Peter vanishes, and Harry asks Otto to shut it down, but Otto assures him that it will stabilize. Spider-Man saves Harry from being killed by flying debris. Spider-Man tries to stop the reactions, but Otto intervenes. The broken glass then kills Otto's wife, and the reaction destroys the inhibitor chip. As a result, he is vulnerable to the AI. The reaction is then eventually turned off by Peter. Physicians try to separate the metal arms from Otto's body in a lab. But the arms come to life and massacre the doctors. Then Otto wakes up and discovers the harm his machines have done. When Otto returns to his damaged lab, the uncontrolled AI drives him insane and orders him to rebuild. It also tells him to steal the money he'll need to complete the task. So he goes to a nearby bank and tears the safe doors off. Peter and his aunt are looking for a loan at the same bank. Peter transforms into Spider-Man. He confronts the mad scientist, but his webs fail him again, and Doc Otto kidnaps Aunt May. He pursues the villain as his webs start working again. He eventually saves his aunt, but Otto is able to walk away with the money. That night Peter attends an event as the Daily Bugle's photographer where J. Jonah Jameson's son, an astronaut, is being honored. And Mary Jane Watson, the astronaut's girlfriend, is with him. Peter is heartbroken as he stands there watching. He eventually finds her and seeks to apologize for missing her play once again. She, on the other hand, is disappointed and tells him that it is too difficult for her to keep thinking about him. Then a drunk Harry confronts Peter, chastising him for his dedication to Spider-Man, the man who murdered his father. Later, a news from Captain John Jameson, announcing that MJ has accepted his marriage proposal, crushes Peter. His powers fail him once more that night, and he crashes in a dark alley. As he reads the Bugle's latest headline, he notices that his vision is decreasing. Peter sees a vision of Uncle Ben and tells him, "I am Spider-Man," as Doc Otto utilizes his finances to reconstruct his lab. He walks away, throwing his outfit in the trash. In the coming days, he is the old powerless Peter Parker, the one with bad luck, who does not deal with crime, gets decent grades, and the one who always attends Mary Jane's performances. He admits to MJ that he has changed. And he can now be there for her, but she claims it's too late because she's engaged to John and that won't change. Peter and his Aunt May pay a visit to Uncle Ben's grave. She considers herself responsible for his death. She was the one who suggested Ben to pick up Peter. Peter, on the other hand, finally admits that he is responsible for Uncle Ben's death. He informs her about a thief who he had the opportunity to stop but did not. A thief who later killed his uncle. Peter tries to take her hand, but she pulls it away. And then, he exits the room. Doc Otto pays a visit to Harry and asks for more tritium in order to conduct a larger fusion experiment. When Harry is threatened, he agrees on the condition that Otto return him alive Spider-Man. Spider-Man can be found, according to Harry, through Peter Parker, a boy who photographs images of him. Meanwhile, Peter comes across a burning building and chooses to be a hero again, with costume or no costume. He rushes inside and saves a child. He eventually discovers that there was another person in the building who never made it out. Later, the landlord's daughter brings Peter chocolate cake and watches him with the obvious expression of a girl in love. Then he finds Aunt May packing everything to move into a little apartment she can afford. Peter tries to make apologies for his last visit, but she stops him. She claims it's all over now, and Peter was brave to tell her the truth about Uncle Ben. She then hugs him and says, "I love you." She also informs Peter about how people need heroes and how heroes sometimes have to give up the things they most love, even their goals. With his mind fresh, Peter focuses and attempts to use his skills once more. But he falls again. MJ later invites Peter to meet her at a cafe. Peter appears to have been on her mind, and she is willing to give relationships another chance. But Peter immediately tells her that he was mistaken in thinking he could be there for her. But he can't, so he neglects the reason he's decided to revive Spider-Man. She asks, frustrated, "Do you love me, or not?" And he says, "No, I don't." She refuses to believe him and requests that he kiss her. However, when they lean forward, his spider sense activate. When a car crashes into the cafe, Peter grabs MJ and takes her to safety. Otto then appears and demands that Peter inform Spider-Man that he will be meeting him at 3 p.m. at the West Side Tower. He grabs MJ as collateral and throws Peter into the wreckage. Peter leaps from the wreckage of the cafe. Suddenly, his vision and strength are restored. Jameson puts Spider-Man's on the wall at the Daily Bugle after someone found it in the trash and sold it to him for $100. But Peter takes it back, leaving a message behind, and Spider-Man returns to meet Otto. At the tower, their fight takes them from the top of the tower to a moving subway car. The monster then realizes Spider-Man's weakness: innocent lives. He throws two bystanders, but Peter immediately catches them. As a result, Otto speeds up the subway card, disconnects the brakes, and flies away. Peter has to remove his mask due to sparks from the smashed control panel. Then, as the train approaches a dead end, Peter steps in front of it and spreads his arms, firing webs at any nearby buildings. He holds the rails tightly and uses every inch of his strength to bring the train to a stop. When he passes out from tiredness, the people grab him up and place him on the floor. They're surprised by what they see as Spider-Man is just a kid. They pledge to hide his identity and return his mask. When Otto returns, the people line up in front of him to protect the tired hero. However, he sweeps them aside and hands Spider-Man over to Harry Osborn. Otto walks away as Harry hands him the tritium. After that, Harry pulls out a knife and prepares to stab Spider-Man. But first, he must be unmasked. Peter wakes up and frees himself from his chains. He wants to know where MJ is kept by Otto. But Harry answers that he only wanted the tritium. Peter believes that the insane scientist must be rebuilding the devices that will kill MJ and half of the city. But Harry isn't interested in it right now. Instead, he accuses Peter of killing his father. Just as Otto turns on the machine, Spider-Man comes at the lab. Peter releases MJ and electrocutes the villain, but the dangerous reaction continues. Peter rushes over to the dazed scientist, revealing his true identity and asking how to shut down the machine. Otto smiles and says, "Brilliant but lazy." The tentacles take over once more, and he refuses to stop the reaction. Peter tells him to remember who he was as a good scientist and avoid the monstrous tentacles. His words had an effect. Otto orders the artificial appendages to pay attention to him right now. He asks Peter to go while he stays behind to prevent the reaction by drowning it in the river. Peter gives Otto one last look. Then it turns to look at MJ, and she sees him without his mask. The building then falls, but Peter is able to grab the debris in time to save her. As he struggles to hold it, Peter tells her, "MJ, in case we die," but he doesn't need to finish. She is well aware that he loves her. Peter accepts his love and tells her that he loves her. In the meantime, Otto makes a vow to himself that he would not die a monster. He drags the structure into the river, drowning both himself and the structure. Peter throws the debris away and escapes with MJ, so they can finally talk openly. "I guess I've always knew," she says. He continues, "Now you know why we can't be together. And also he can't allow her take that chance because Spider-Man will always have enemies." He further says, "I will always be Spider-Man." Harry Osborn, on the other hand, stews at his home. And then, he hears the Green Goblins laughing. Behind a mirror, an image of his father emerges and demands that Harry avenge him. But because Peter is his best friend, Harry refuses, throwing his knife at the mirror, exposing the secret hideout. Norman stored his goblin suit, pumpkin explosives, performance booster, and glider behind it. MJ abandons John at the altar on the day of her wedding and rushes to Peter. She tells Peter that she is aware of the dangers, but it is her decision, and she wants to face them alongside him. Ultimately, they kiss. They hear a siren in the distance, and MJ tells Peter, "Go get him, Tiger." In order to save the day, Spider-Man swings toward danger happening in the city. The movie ends here. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like and comment to support the channel. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.